If you are interested in going to the caucus and you are just interested in being there to vote for your candidate, hopefully Ron Paul, and that's really all you want to do, you're not interested in participating in the party, you're not interested in speaking on behalf of anything, then there is no obligation on you to do anything other than show up, sit, be quiet, write a name on a piece of paper, and then that's it. So I think a lot of people get the impression that they are going to be obligated to have debates or chat with people or argue over their candidate, and that's not the case at all, especially on the Republican side. So for Republicans, the presidential preference poll is simply that: it's a secret ballot, write a name on a piece of paper, that's all there is to it. Typically you're in a high school gymnasium or a cafeteria or some other kind of large room meeting place, and when you come in the door there'll be a table of a handful of people that'll be there to check people in. So that's checking, make sure they're on the voter registration list. If they're not, then Iowa has same-day registration, so you can register to vote right there, as well as change your registration if you're already registered as a Democrat or independent. You have to be registered as a Republican in order to participate in the caucus, and you have to be a resident of that precinct that you're caucusing at. So yeah, you'll come in, you'll check in. If your name's on the list, then you'll register right there by filling out a voter registration form. Then you'll be into the room where the caucus will start usually promptly at 7 p.m. So you want to make sure you're there, in plenty of time before that, so you can get checked in or fill out that paperwork. And then the process starts after that. So there are a number of different places to check to see where your precinct is. You can go to the Secretary of State for the state of Iowa. You can go to any of the county or state GOP websites, as well as the Ron Paul website, campaign website. You can type in your address, your current residence, your resident address. It'll tell you what precinct you're in and where the caucus location is for that precinct. Good evening.
Hey there.
Hey, I'm Jason.
I'm Alex.
Yeah. Here for the caucus?
Oh, I definitely am.
Okay. Are you registered in this precinct?
I need to be, actually.
You need to be registered? Okay. And you live in this precinct?
I do. I'm
okay.
from here.
Are you registered to vote already, or you're not registered to vote at all?
I actually need to be registered.
You're registered to vote? Okay, so I have a voter registration form for you here.
Okay.
I'll give you a pen. So take a few minutes to fill that out.
Okay.
Make sure you put your current address and all that kind of thing. I'll probably need to see a photo ID. Per the Iowa code, you need to have a government-issued photo ID that will show your address. You can also use to show your current address. So if your current ID does not have your current address on it, so you've moved into the precinct recently, but your driver's license still has your address from another town within Iowa, then you can bring a utility bill or something like that might have your name and address on it. So that usually counts as residency. If you are not a resident of that precinct, then you cannot caucus at that site. So after you checked into the caucus, you can enter the room where the caucus will be held. Depending on the precinct, those can be different sizes. It might be a high school gymnasium or a cafeteria. It might be a small meeting room in a building, something like that. So depending on what the size of that precinct is going to depend on how big a room it is. So there may be anywhere from a handful of people to several hundred, depending on the population of that particular precinct. Get there. Make sure you get there early, and as you have, and from there you're just waiting for the caucus to start, which should start promptly at 7 p.m. So talk to folks, introduce yourself. These are all people that live in your precinct, so they're all your neighbors. They're all within probably a few blocks of you one way or the other. So have a chat with them, tell them who you support, ask them who they support, ask them, just have a general conversation with them and network and get to know some of those folks. Especially from a perspective of supporting Ron Paul, the more that you're friendly, the more that they see somebody who they can relate to and that they trust or that they are friendly with, that's going to create a positive perception of Ron Paul for them as well. So anybody that shows up those caucuses that may be undecided on a candidate or is not real strong for a particular candidate, they can be swayed very easily just by simply seeing other people that having a positive impression of the candidate that you support. When 7 p.m. rolls around, the caucus will begin to get started. It may start a little bit late depending on how many people are in line to get checked in or how busy that caucus site may be, so be patient. So there may be a lot of people in the room. At some point, whoever the temporary chair, and the temporary chair is somebody who's been appointed by the county Republican Party to kick off the caucus, and they're the ones that organize all the check-in and all those kind of things. They will ask everybody to be seated so that we can start the meeting. And by the way, they're members of the precinct too, so they're not an outsider. They're just one of your neighbors that has volunteered to do this. It's to your benefit because you want the evening to move along. You want to get through the agenda. You want to try to do those kind of things.
Okay. Yeah, no, I heard someone say, well, you can actually, they'll give you a precinct chairman packet, and you can actually just follow the directions if you had to do that.
Yep.
I mean, but
yeah, there's a packet. All of us will get one. I'm going to be doing my precinct, so I will be doing this role at my precinct. Okay. But yeah, you get a packet ahead of time. So technically, yes, if you wanted to volunteer to be the chair or whatever, first of all, if you do that and nobody else knows you in the room, you're going to be seen. You're just going to be viewed as an agitator. You're probably not going to get voted to do it anyway, because that comes up for a vote. So everybody gets to vote on who gets to be the permanent chair. Everybody in the room is going to be motivated and incentivized just to have the temporary chair become the permanent chair. It's easy. It's expedient. They already know the deal. They don't have dictatorial powers over you anyway. So let's just move it along. If you raise your hand and try to agitate in that way, then you're only going to risk being perceived negatively. After you lump the permanent chair, I believe the first order of business, and then you pass the hat. So you'll also pass what they call the Lincoln bag, which is asking for free will donations that will go to the county GOP. And then the first order of business should be the presidential preference poll, which starts off with speeches from candidates or their delegates or whoever's been selected. So that'll be on the agenda. I think the chair has some discretion about how long each representative can speak. It's usually 3 minutes or so, especially with the number of candidates. We won't be here all night, so we want to try to keep it relatively brief. So they'll we usually just go in alphabetical order. So Michelle Bachmann, I suppose, will probably be the first one. So Michelle Bachmann, is there anybody here that wants to speak on behalf of Michelle Bachmann? And usually one person will raise their hand. Sometimes nobody raises their hand. And then as a chair, I might ask, is there anybody that would like to, because she deserves her due and all those kind of things. If nobody volunteers, we just move to the next candidate.
Say you're at a caucus or a primary location and you're pretty confident that you're the most appropriate person to give the speech. In your experience, what would be the best way to talk with other Ron Paul supporters who are there to make sure that if you feel you're the best person to do those things, that you'd be able to do those things, and to have a unified front as we're taking care of our business on the night of?
Well, you just said a lot of it. I mean, part of what you want to do when you're mingling is to identify the Ron Paul supporters, make sure that you know who's going to be giving the speech. So, is there anybody here that wants to do it? Because you may be in a precinct where there isn't anybody that's already been pre-designated or has volunteered to do that. So make sure you're talking about that. And you may have multiple people that are interested in doing it. Well, I really want to do it. No, I really, really want to do Ron Paul. Well, in that case, you guys need to chat and see if you can figure out an amicable way to figure out who can do it. As the chair, if I have more than one person that wants to speak for a particular candidate, the first thing I'm going to do is go, you guys, is there anybody that would like to defer to the other, just to be civil? And somebody may go, oh, that's okay, he can do it, I'm fine, that's cool. Quite frankly, if as a Ron Paul supporter and somebody giving advice, but I don't do that. Figure that out beforehand, or defer to one another and that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's going to be seen as contentious. Remember, this is Iowa. It was all about Iowa nice. Nobody wants to be there and be very confrontational or see a bunch of conflict or angst. That's only going to turn people off. Most of the people there are going to be be very off-put by a lot of confrontation. So, and that reflects negatively on whoever's sticker or T-shirt you got on. And then once that's all done, then we'll say, okay, it's time to do the presidential preference poll. You'll have your ballots that I handed out. So go ahead and take a few minutes and write down who you prefer for the poll. They'll have somebody that hopefully there that will be collecting the ballots. There'll be at least some kind of light security, so people can't just use blank sheets of paper. They'll probably have a mark on it, something like that, so they've identified how many ballots they've handed out. Because they're not official ballots. They're not like when you go to vote in a general election. They're not going to be, it's not going to be secured. It's not going to go through a scanner. It really is just a straw poll with little pieces of paper that have your candidate, hopefully Ron Paul, written down on it. And then we'll collect those all in a hat. As the chair, we'll take it over to a set table off to the side or something like that and count those. There can be a representative for each candidate as well that can observe the vote count, so they can make sure that we're counting fairly and that we're not disincluding any of the votes. If there's something that's very illegible, then they'll try to make a call on, okay, who is that supposed to be, and that way everybody can weigh in, like, oh, I definitely think that's so and so. And then the secretary, which is the part I missed. One of the early parts of the caucus is that we also elect a secretary who basically just is a record keeper, the person who's taking notes, who's recording votes that have been taken, or who's going to be on the central committee and that kind of stuff. You just got to have that. Somebody to be a record keeper. Somebody from that will, either the chair or the secretary will then call in. Part of the packet that they'll have will have a call-in number to the state for them to call into an automated phone system to enter the number of votes for each candidate. And then it'll be the same thing. It'll be a kind of a voicemail automated thing and say, okay, how many votes for Ron Paul? 52. And how many for Romney? 5. And how many for Gingrich? 2. Once that gets done and gets sent on to the state, the chair will come back up and talk to the caucus and announce the results. So here are our results for the presidential poll. In the meantime, while all that counting is going on, everybody else is just waiting. So you're waiting. That may take several minutes. Hopefully when they get done, I'll come up. When I did it, for instance, I had a big flip chart. I just wrote down, I had it all pre-prepared with the different candidates, and I just filled in the number next to them. And they say, okay, well, here's the results. Ron Paul has won our particular precinct with 52 out of 100 votes. Romney came in second with 30, or so on and so forth, and report those. At that point, the chair would maybe say, well, that's the end of the presidential poll. If there's anybody that would like to leave, now would be the time to do that so that we can move on with the rest of our business. They'll probably tell you that to give you the option. The vast majority of people that attend the caucus will probably leave at that point because they're not interested in being a delegate or being on the county central committee or suggesting platform planks, which are the 3 main pieces of business after we get done with the presidential poll. So the vast majority of people will then file out. We'll allow that chaos to subside. Whoever's left then will continue on with those other pieces of business.